King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table continued. So do you remember that Lancelot went home to Camelot, and in the meantime his wife Elaine became very sick after having the baby, and she died. And she had herself placed in a boat and sent down the river with a note for Lancelot. So what's happened now is that everyone in Camelot thinks that Lancelot has deserted his wife and baby. So you can pause the video now to reflect on two questions. Is it Lancelot's fault? And what do you think will happen to Lancelot? So pause the video now to write down your thoughts. Okay, let's find out. Lancelot could say nothing in his defence. There seemed nothing he could do to win back the favour of Arthur or Guinevere. Just when Lancelot thought he could bear it no longer, the old woman came to court. It was Bryson, Elaine's nurse. "My lord," she said, "news came to us at Castle Corbenic of Sir Lancelot. There's some as say he is accused of deserting his wife, but it is not true. Elaine loved Lancelot from the moment they met, but Lancelot's love was all enchantment. My lady said herself it would only ever be enchantment that would win his affection. He was that dedicated to his queen. I was there, my lord, when the sorceress came with wild black hair and starry blue eyes. She gave the maid of Astolat a love potion. Arthur recognised Morgana Le Fay immediately. Will we never be rid of her? He muttered. So Arthur proclaimed Lancelot free of any taint of dishonour, and Guinevere blushed with joy at the thoughts that Lancelot had been true to her after all. Forgive me, Guinevere said softly to Lancelot. My cruelty was from the jealousy of love. And yet, Morgana Le Fay's magic had worked in unexpected ways. Lancelot was forgiven by Arthur, but Lancelot knew in his heart he was unworthy of his king. He was even more in love with the queen now, and now she loved him as much. So it's not good to be loving someone else that's married. So he feels really bad. Well, were you correct? What had you predicted? Did you remember that he had been enchanted and that perhaps the lady that did that would come back? And had you figured out that it was Morgana Le Fay who had used the potion? Right, chapter 12, the arrival of Sir Galahad. People wondered at Mordred with his black hair and cruel pale blue eyes. Some noticed how he seemed to look like Arthur. Arthur had made him a knight while Lancelot was still lost in Castle Corbenic. But Mordred felt most at home in the hidden away places deep in the forest. It was just in one such place he came across a woman sitting by a pot bubbling over a fire. She had hair as black as Mordred's and long thin fingers ending in wicked nails. So, Mordred, she said, it is time we meet. I have watched you from the day you arrived at Camelot. Before that even, I watched you being born. Mordred sat down. He suspected that he knew who this woman might be. I knew your mother, she said. More than that, Mordred, I know your father too. And then Morgana Le Fay told him things he had wondered about almost every day of his life. The questions no one could answer before now, although perhaps not as fully as she could have. She made no mention of enchantment, nor that she had planned Mordred's entire life. Arthur, my father, are you sure? said Mordred, his fists clenched. Morgana watched him intently. He would not fail her. The hate she planned all those years ago suddenly blossomed. "So I am his heir? Arthur's heir?" he said. Morgana told him to keep silent. "The time will come," she said. "Do you believe that Mordred is Arthur's son?" Mordred and Morgana le Fay often met in the forest after that. Together they began to plan. That Pentecost, a squire came panting into the great hall of Camelot during dinner and said to Arthur, "Sir, the strangest thing has appeared, a great stone floating down the river, with a sword sticking into it." So they left their dinner and rushed to the river. There, bobbing by the bank, was a boulder of red marble with a sword stuck in it. Engraved on the stone were some words: "No man shall draw me but the purest knight of all." Lancelot and Arthur, "That must mean you." "No, no," he said, suddenly thinking of Guinevere and blushing deep red. "Well, who then?" Pause the video now, children, again, and think to yourselves, what plan do you think Mordred and Morgana le Fay have come up with? What do you think this sword is in a big stone called a boulder? Does it remind you of an earlier part of the story? So what are you thinking will happen? What's the new challenge? Pause and write down your thoughts. Back in the great hall, they found a group of nuns led by an abbess. There was a tall young man with them. He carried himself proudly like a true knight. It almost seemed he wore a suit of light. His armor was so polished and shining, but strangely he carried no sword in his scabbard, only a shield painted with scarlet. "This boy was left to our care by his mother, who is dead," said the abbess. "He is of noble parentage and has been taught well in the use of arms. The time has come for him to take his place at the round table, to follow his destiny." He stepped forward to stand in front of Arthur. "He is Galahad, son of Lancelot du Lac and Elaine, maid of Astolat." The round table gasped, and Lancelot stood up in astonishment. "But the round table is full," said Arthur. "There is only the perilous seat. No knight has dared to sit there." But as he spoke, Galahad was walking round the table. He stopped by the last empty seat. He lifted the silk covering of the seat. There, beneath, in gold letters, was his name. "You cannot be a knight without a sword," said Arthur. "Come, I know the sword for you, and I will make you a knight with it." So for the second time the court went down to the river, where the boulder of red marble bobbed against the bank. "There, Galahad," said Arthur, "take it from the stone." And without a second's thought, Galahad leant from the bank and slipped the sword from its rocky bed. Arthur took the blade from him and knighted him at once. Lancelot was overjoyed that his son had been chosen as the purest knight of all, but he wondered what would be asked of him. He did not have long to wait in finding out. Barely was Galahad's sword in his sheath, Camelot rocked with a sudden blast of wind. The candles blew out. Over the round table a light began to shine. It became a shape, a bowl or a dish covered by a silk cloth. It hovered there for a while and then suddenly vanished. "What was that?" said Arthur. "The Holy Grail," said Galahad. "The cup which Jesus drank from at the Last Supper before he was crucified. We are not fit to see it uncovered. The vision summons us on a quest. It is the greatest challenge to seek out the Grail. If we are worthy, we may find it." Galahad was to be the Grail Knight, the guardian of the sacred cup. Suddenly, Lancelot knew he too had to search for the Grail. Perhaps on the quest he might find forgiveness for his love of Guinevere. "My lord," said Lancelot, "I also wish to seek leave to quest for the Holy Grail." "And I," said Gawain. Then there was a chorus of voices around the table. Nearly all rose and made the vow to seek the Grail and bring it back to Camelot. Arthur was proud to see so many of his knights rise to the challenge. He looked at them round the table. "Tomorrow, then," he said, "you will begin, and may God be with you." In the morning they all trooped out through the gates of Camelot. Then they split up in ones and twos, riding away from Camelot, some this way and some that in their quest. Guinevere watched the knights disappear into the distance. She was weeping, but not for the Round Table. "But he will come back to me. I know. He will. He must," she whispered in her heart. And so we have many of the knights venturing off to find the Holy Grail. Quite a few questions I hope you had there, like what is the Holy Grail? Is it really Lancelot's son? And do you have any other questions? Perhaps what is Mordred up to? So jot down your questions and perhaps some predictions. And if you heard any words you're not sure of, jot those down and see if you can find them in the dictionary. We'll have a little chat about it. On Friday, we'll chat about your notes and what you found out and anything else that you would still like to know about the story or the things you were unable to find out. Okay? So keep making your notes, possibly listen to this recording again if you need to. Hope you're enjoying the story, everyone. Bye for now.